Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Simon, but also go by the artist name of hamsammych. And today I'm going to be making a video about how music artists actually go about making a track from scratch. And the program that I'm going to be demonstrating today is something called Ableton Live. So a lot of different artists would use some other programs, for example, like FL Studios, Logic, or even GarageBand. But the one that I'm going through is Ableton Live, which is the one I've learned the most and I love the most. And a big reason why I'm going through this is because a lot of my friends were asking sort of how I went about making my new release. And I thought it'd be really interesting for sort of more casual music listeners to sort of see, I guess, the technicalities of what your favorite artists do. And hopefully that will give you a bit more appreciation into how much work and how much sweat goes into making like a 3 to 4 minute song. So let's get started. So I've got Ableton open here, and this is the project file for my track, When I Cannot See You. So I'll sort of go through just what you're sort of looking at on the screen first, just to navigate what the program is. So on this big box on the right, you can see there's all these like horizontal layers of stuff. And so that is, I guess, the music timeline. So you've got all these tracks, all these individual tracks layered on top of each other. So each of these tracks have different sounds. And when you put them all together, that is your 3 to 4 minute track. On the left-hand side here, you've got the, I guess the taskbar, and this gives you access to pretty much everything that's in the program. So you've got like sounds. So just, yeah, you've got different, I guess, instruments here. You've got different drum kits you can use. You've got audio effects, so you can add different like things like delay, like echo. You can change the pitch of certain things, add some reverb, change the volume, stuff like that. And there's a lot of different other things you have access to. And then on the bottom here, this I guess is like I think it's like the track viewer. So if I was to like click a random track, like you'll see the bottom sort of changes, and that's because it's just showing everything that's within that track. So it sort of like zooms in and shows you like the instrument and the processing that's used. And we'll go through that in a bit of detail when I open a few specific, I guess, instruments and sounds. Another thing I wanted to go through, which I thought would be interesting, in these tracks, there's pretty much like 2 types of sounds that can be sort of played within Ableton. So the first one is audio files. So if you see here, like this track, like this tambourine, you can see it looks like a proper like sound wave. And so that is like audio. So someone would have recorded that, the computer recorded that audio wave, converted it to a sound wave, and now we can actually process it. So you can like chop and change it. You can do what you want. The other type of audio that we can manipulate is called MIDI. So compared to this tambourine, which you can see it looks like an actual sound wave, if I open up this shaker, you're going to see it's like random squares. And so what MIDI pretty much is, it's sort of like a digital synthesized version of sound, pretty much. So the computer has its own algorithm that determines what a certain sound will sound like. And then what you can do, you can input exactly what type of note that is. So for example, looking at this, what is this? This is my shaker. So at the moment, I've got this shaker, which is just one note. So if I just play it, you can hear that. So at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm inputting C, which is just a note. And every time I trigger a C, this instrument on Ableton, which is this thing here, it triggers that same noise. So you can see it. It's like playing. So if I had something a bit more, let's say like this lead, hold on, let me just unsolo my shaker and I'll go to this lead. So here you can see when I open up the squares, I've actually got a whole different melody written down. So if I'm playing that, So pretty much you're telling the computer what notes to play and it synthesizes that sound for you. Unlike the other like tambourine sound where it's a recorded sound and that's like the only sound it makes. So those are the two sort of, I guess, like sound files that you would have inside of Ableton. So you have these sound wave looking things, and you also have these rectangle looking things, which are generally like synthesized sounds. So I've also got a book to go through in case I forget sort of anything. So I wanted to go through sort of how I started writing this song. So to give you an idea, I might just play a little bit of the track from the start so you sort of get the vibe of what this track is. So let's play it. Also, sometimes if you hear some crackles, it's just because I'm recording my screen at the moment and running Ableton. So it does take a lot of CPU, I guess, performance. But hopefully I've done my best to try and minimize the amount of CPU I'm using. So sorry if you hear any random crackles. So the first thing I wanted to get started with was like how artists generally start making music. So the cool thing about this is that it really depends on each individual artist, and every artist will also have different ways of starting different types of songs. So, with anything creative, the possibilities are pretty much endless. So some people, they'll start with like a drum beat, they'll tap that out and they'll start adding other drum beats and they'll start adding like a melody on top of that. Some people, they might just start with like, just like a piano riff, and then they'll add the percussion on top of that. So for this song, I actually started with a sample, like a random sample. It wasn't even anything like melodic or anything, but it was actually this watering plant sound. So if I play it, I'm going to take this off. So this was like pretty much what the original sound was. Yep, so pretty much someone just watering their plant. And I think when I started writing this song, it's also a big thing, like your state of mind when you're writing a song. Usually when you start writing a song, you usually sort of have like a vibe or a certain way of portraying your idea. And at the time of writing this, I was in like a really good mood. I think I was like pretty chill, pretty settled in life. And so I wanted to make something, quite comfortable, quite easy on the ears. And so this was one of the samples that really stuck out to me. And so if you listen to it again, it's like you're in a really, really small room and someone's running the plant. So one of the first things I did was added just some reverb to really echo out. So you're actually like in like an environment when you're listening to it. So you should be able to hear the difference on that. So once I had that vibe, that sort of atmosphere, now I want something actually quite melodic within my track. So the first thing I created was this horn riff. So let's play. I'm going to solo the horn riff, and I'll solo I'll get the watering plant, and so this is what you get. So it's quite dreamy. And so obviously the more you play it, obviously the more bored you get. So the next thing I would do is then add like a melody on top of that. So this horn riff, it's more dreamy, it's more echoey, so it's more in the back. So I wanted something, another thing to sort of hit you a bit more directly. So the next thing I added was this ringing bell. So I'll play that now. So it's already like with only 3 tracks, it's already got quite like an atmosphere or a vibe. So like, for example, I'd be imagining like lying down on some grass somewhere in a park, and then, birds are just chirping this melodic sort of progression at me. But with a lot of type of music that I listen to, I do want this track eventually to be, more poppy, more dancey. So the next thing I added was a bass. And that bass now starts giving you a bit more hype into like leading the listener to where you want them to be, which is generally like the chorus. So I've got this bass pluck or my bouncy bass, and now I'll show you where that leads to. So now you can already feel it's got a lot more body, because now you've got all there's like these high frequency echoes and rings. Then you've got this low type of bouncing bass. So it's plugging you along. And then, the more stuff you add, the more exciting it gets. And you try to lead the listener to where you want to go. So one more thing before I get to like the intro section where the drums actually start coming in is like instruments that call and respond. So I have this soprano, I think it's this soprano pluck. Let me just have a quick listen. Yeah, it's this. So with that intro I had at the start, I've added this other soprano pluck, which gives like a counter melody, and it's like a nice call and response with that original idea. So let me just go through that. So now this is where the counter melody comes in. Cool. I pretty much stopped you right at the vocals. So we might as well just go through the vocals, since that's the next thing that comes in. So let me just play. I might as well play from where the vocals just started. So those are the vocals. So this, I guess, will give you an idea into like a bit of vocal processing with vocals in general. Like I love, listening to vocals, and the problem is in my case, I'm not the greatest of singers. And so I've had to, when I was making this song, all I had was my voice. So the beauty of this program is that you can really process it and pretty much make it anything pretty much. So I've got all this sort of processing that, as you can see on the bottom. So if I take it all away, I'll show you what it sounds like. Also, be prepared. You're going to hear my naked voice, which does not sound good. So let me play that for you.
Awake at night, I cannot sleep. The thoughts of you linger and fill my mind.
I apologize that you had to hear that, but that's all I had to work with at the time. So let's turn all that processing back on. So I've got like an auto tune, which makes it like more like high pitched and more echoey. And I guess the reason for this is because I listen to a lot of emotional EDM type music. So for example, like Porter Robinson, like Daft Punk, I sort of like that really high, like robotic voice. And so that's what I was trying to mimic here. So I'll take off the reverb. Whoops. Take off a bit of the processing. So
awake at night, I cannot sleep. The thoughts of you linger and fill my mind. Every moment shared between us, locked away inside, intertwined.
Cool. So that's already sounding pretty nice. The only other things is now I want that vocals to have a bit more space, a bit more echoey, again, to sort of put you in like a nice listening atmosphere. So again, I'm going to put some of these effects back on. And here it is.
Awake at night, I cannot sleep. The thoughts of you linger and fill my mind.
Cool. So there are some examples of, how artists sort of go through vocal processing. There's so much more to that, of course, but this is just, again, I want to give you just a small insight into how, different tracks are sort of made up. So the next thing I want to go through is the percussion. So percussion of a song, usually a very exciting thing. So let me just play the percussion here. I'm going to skip to the snares. Cool. And so, as you can see, I've got a few layers of different types of percussion. So let's start with the kick. So let me just solo that. So usually when people are recording their drums, often people will use a drum kit. So let me just get a drum kit, and I'll show you sort of what people tend to do. So we'll get a drum kit. Let's just get this one, this hamsammych one. Oh, not responding. Get rid of this. All right. Just give me a sec. I'm just going to change my drum. All right, now my pads work. So if I have this drum kit, see how there's this 4x4 square here? So I've got some hardware to the side of me where I have this exact 4x4 pattern, and each thing, each square here is a different type of sound. So if I'm playing something, I'll play a few. Cool. So what people tend to do is they might record something. So let's, I'm going to start recording this. I'll get the metronome up so I can sort of stay in time. Cool. So as you can see, this is where you can see, I guess, the MIDI recording come into effect. You see all these sort of squares. Let me highlight for you. So see these sort of squares that I've put. So those are the drum hits that the program has actually seen me get recorded. And so what happens there is you can take these individual tracks out. So let's make another track here. So I've got an empty one. I can drag, let's say, this kick to this empty track. And see, notice how that square in the bottom left is now gone, and it's actually gone to this new track. And so in terms of the general process of how I made this song, I would have started just drumming out my own sort of pattern. And once I've got a few sort of sounds that I really like, I drag them out into their own sort of channel. So as you can see, kick, snare, hats, tambourine. I put them onto their own channel so that I can process them separately. And this is important because each I guess, percussion hit requires its own type of processing. So if I just solo the kick, for example, a kick sound, you generally want quite fat, quite low, but also I don't want it quite echoey. It's I don't want that bass echoing out because it's quite unpleasant if it's very it's very bass heavy. You want the actual the bass instrument doing that. So you want the kick sort of nice, quick, sharp, but still has that sort of presence, that fatness. But you compare that to something like a snare. So I'll show you this snare. that I used for this track. So you can hear with that, it's quite like echoey. It sort of goes out into the atmosphere. And just to show you some processing on the snare. So I have it going to like a reverb, which is this yellow thing here. So if I tone down, like I have no reverb at all. Yeah, it's like someone's hitting like a snare drum just in like a small room. But as I add more echo, you can hear it sort of having more presence within the track. And so that's an example of me processing some drums, layering them together, and then you'll get this drum beat. Sweet. So another thing I'll show, I guess, is just a few of like the synths, and a lot of these are used as like melodies and counter melodies. So I'm going to play this one section for you, like this new idea section. Cool. So in like a lot of songs, like especially like pop, like mainstream, like sort of EDM, a lot of people sort of focus on like the vocals, which is great and all because vocals are great. But what I love doing is like focus, or trying to get the listener to focus on like a counter melody or like another layer of a melodic progression, which really adds to, I guess, like the idea and the emotions of what the track's trying to say. So I really like this counter melody. So I'll solo it and you can hear what it's doing. Cool. So you might not have noticed that when you were listening to like that section just then without me soloing it. So I'll play it with that counter melody, and I'll take it out, like I'll mute just that one layer, and you can sort of hear the difference of what it does. So you can hear like without that counter melody, like the track still works, but if you have that thing sort of playing around the vocals, it sounds really sort of nice. And those are the sort of things that sort of get you moving in your chair, get you like bopping around, because your ears are like weaving in and out of different melodic and harmonic progressions. And that's the thing I love about, sort of listening to music critically, because you can hear all these different layers, what the artist is putting there on purpose to sort of get you to move and to sort of feel where they're going with their creative idea. That's pretty much it, to be honest. I didn't want to go into too much detail because it's more just to show you guys, again, the simple, I guess, a simple way of seeing how much sort of work goes into making a track. And I haven't even gone into like the specifics of like how to synthesize a specific sound wave, for example. So hopefully you guys enjoyed sort of going through this project file with me. If there's anything more specific that you guys want, you can let me know and I can go through that. But until then, thanks so much for listening, and I hope you guys have a great day. See ya.